Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Chiseled. And why do we call it Chiseled? Because we're all the work in progress. I'm your host, Rob Commodari. I'm also the author of the book Better Than You Think and a co-author book, Next Level Your Life. Today, I have a guest, Janell Schmittling, correct? I'm pronouncing that right, Janell?
Yep, you're right.
And all the way from O'Fallon, Illinois. We had a conversation briefly before this that she's 20 minutes outside of St. Louis, but she's from Illinois. So we got to get that straight for all our listeners out there, because Janell is a real estate agent that I've met through the Buffini coaching system, as you've heard many agents we've spoken to over the last couple of years. And she's got a great story to tell. She's come from, let's say, the points of being down and out to being a very, very successful real estate agent, inspiring person, inspiring, leading other women. And I'm looking forward to hearing your story today, Janell. So thank you for being on the call today.
Yeah, thanks, Rob.
So look, Janell, as we get started here, if you could give us a little bit of insight as to your backstory. So like right now, we know you have a team, you have a successful team. Just last year, you sold over 200 houses as a team, $50 million in business, but it wasn't always that good. Can you give us a little insight or backstory of where you started and how you got here?
Yeah. So about 15 years ago, I actually got my real estate license. That was after I had been doing some assistant work for another realtor in our area. I actually had been applying for jobs and couldn't find anything. So I thought I was going to do assistant work for a while with him, and I ended up finding out that I actually really liked real estate. So the agent that I worked for at that time, he did a lot of new construction, and so I started sitting in model homes for him, and that's really kind of how I got my feet wet. But then the agent that I was working for, he ended up getting out of the business, and so it was at that point that I had to decide if I was going to really kind of hit it with real estate or find another job. And so I decided to join on with a brokerage and go off on my own at that time. So that was about 15 years ago.
And so about 8 years ago, you got involved with the Buffini coaching systems, correct?
I did, yes.
And there was a struggle. Can you mind sharing the story of struggle that you had that led you from you got into coaching and then you had all the success? Can you share that with us?
Yeah. After going off on my own as an agent, I really just didn't have any systems, and I really wasn't at a brokerage where they did much training with me. So I was really struggling. My kids were little. I felt like I was trying, but I was doing a lot of like following up with Zillow leads or trying to get buyers and sellers from open houses. And I was maybe doing one sale a month if I was lucky. So I was really struggling. I had debated getting out of the business several times. And I was also going through a lot of personal issues at that time. I shared on my story through Buffini that my husband was actually battling an alcohol addiction back then. So there were just a lot of personal things in my life that I was struggling with, and not being able to be successful at work was causing my self-esteem to be even worse. And so I knew that I needed to make a change, and I wasn't exactly sure what it was. I had actually prayed about it for a long time, and I ended up one night finding the Buffini and Company website and watch all of the success stories on there. And I actually was very inspired by all of them. So I had no knowledge of Buffini and Company. I had never gone to any of their events or done any coaching. But I ended up signing up for, it was like Peak Producers at that time, and kind of just jumped all in from that.
So that was 8 years ago, correct?
It was, yes.
About 8 years ago. So in doing that, like, you didn't come out of the gates gangbusters. So was it a gradual increase, or was it like you started getting systems down, and then it like the compound effect took over, and then bang, you exploded? Is that kind of how it happened?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly did start seeing results pretty quickly. And I think mainly for me, it was because I know when I watched all of the success videos on the Buffini website, it really inspired me. And I think it was like the first time that I had seen, I didn't even know any of those people from the stories that I saw, but to me, they all looked like down to earth, normal people. And so I was really inspired by how they all like found a system and they were able to help, grow themselves. And so I think for the first time ever, I just started believing that there was hope, maybe. And so I really put my all into doing the peak producers, and I did start seeing results right away. Like I tripled my business the very first year that I did the program with Buffini and Company. So I went from like 12 homes to 36 right away.
I guess that's enough to inspire you, huh? Tripling your business, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, once I started getting some results, then my motivation was even greater to kind of keep growing.
So you made a comment. You said you finally believed there was hope. How do you
Yeah.
define hope, Janell? How do you define hope?
Believing that there's something better out there than what you're currently, getting in your life. Like I said, I had gone through a lot of personal things. So my self-esteem was very low at that time. And I didn't believe that I was able to be successful, I think. So just getting even a couple of transactions under my belt really started giving me hope that maybe there was a possibility for me to do more with my life, which encouraged me to continue on with like the Buffini program. It also encouraged me to start reaching out to a lot of agents that I was meeting at events. And I think surrounding yourself with all of those people who are like-minded. I know we talk about this a lot at events, but surrounding myself with like-minded people also continued to help me grow my self-esteem and help me to believe in myself.
So was there a time, I guess, that like you didn't believe like you were good enough, you were smart enough, or like you could had even had the ability to be successful, and the real estate
Oh yeah.
success, or so you were there, and then was it a gradual shifting of that tide?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah, so I definitely struggled with believing in myself. I mean, that's something that I still even struggle with today, even after, growing to where I have. I go through phases where I struggle with, imposter syndrome, or, I still think like, oh, how I could never get myself to the next level. Like I would reach one level and then I would struggle with like believing in myself to get to the next level. So it's something that I have always struggled with. And honestly, the more people that I talk to, I think a lot of people, and particularly women, struggle with this. And so for me, the biggest thing that helped me kind of have some mind shift change was the people that I surrounded myself with. And kind of stepping outside my comfort zone. And when I started, being more open about where I was at in my life, I actually started finding that a lot of people struggled with the same things that I did. And so it was like the first time that I realized, that I had this vision in my mind that everybody else has it together and I'm the only one that doesn't. But when I started realizing that other people were struggling with the same thing, it helped me to want to continue to surround myself with people that were trying to grow themselves.
yeah, I find that so amazing that so many people that whether they're doing well or not, but that are doing, I'm just going to say specifically doing well now, they have this, what you call the imposter syndrome, which for the audience means you don't believe you're smart enough, good enough, or anybody's going to listen to anything you have to say, something to that effect. And we all think we live when we're suffering that, we feel like we're living this we're in this isolation, or we live in this isolated life where nobody's going what I'm going through, right? And here you've gone through it,
Yeah.
and you continue to do it. So I guess the question, you kind of answered it, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Like, how do you manage those moments when you are feeling you're struggling with some of the self-esteem issues? I know you talked about surrounding yourself with other people, but is there anything else that you do to manage that feeling? What else do you do?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one thing is, yeah, besides like the community of people that I've surrounded myself with, I think it's also the things that I put into my brain. You know, I never used to listen to podcasts, and now I do. I never used to read books on, you know, self growth, and now I do. So I think it's been a big part of helping me to have more of a positive mindset, and you know, being able to believe and, you know, continuing to learn from other people that have done more than me. So I'm really a big believer in like trying to stay positive and putting the good stuff in my brain. I never realized like how important that was until I started doing it in my life. So like even now, like having a coach after 8 years, I honestly don't know how I would not have one. I mean, because there's times that I just, you know, I'm going through some phases now where, you know, when you meet so many of your goals, you then start to struggle with like what's next. And, you know, having a coach to talk to has really helped get me through some of those, you know, times. Having a coach also has really helped me like as my business grew to like levels that I never even thought were possible. My coach now has helped me to kind of put things in play to continue to grow myself, where before I didn't even think that those things were possible. So I think just surrounding yourself with the right community, you know, the right books, podcasts, the right people really are the number one thing that I think make a difference in my life.
You know, I just realized, thank you for sharing that, by the way. I just realized you and I have the same coach, by the way. Kelly Snyder from
Yeah, we
Buchanan.
do. Yeah.
Yeah. I just
Yep.
It just hit me.
Oh yeah.
So I know what you're talking
Yeah,
about
I
there, and I think like I suffer from that "what's next" syndrome too, right? I
yeah.
do you celebrate your victories? Do you celebrate your accomplishments?
I have gotten better about it, but I definitely, when I first started coaching, you know, I would reach a goal and then I just was setting the next one and I wanted to keep going and going and going. And there was a period where I think I got a little bit, I know for me, because I struggled for so long that once I started reaching my goals, I just didn't want to stop. So I know Buffini and Company teaches like, you know, living the good life. So not only like making money, but also being able to take time off and do all of those things. I did go through a period where I just worked a lot because I was so excited that things were happening for me that that's all that I did was put my energy into that. So I think through coaching, I then started to realize like, wait a minute, I'm starting to burn myself out. There's other things besides just making money. Like, what does it mean to me to live a good life? And so I started focusing on other things besides just growing the business. And honestly, every time I do that and I just focus more on the goal of, I've kind of stopped focusing on the goal of just money. And it seems like my business does even better by just kind of focusing on like my why.
That's good. So I got 3 questions here for you. How do you celebrate when you choose to celebrate? That's number 1. But go ahead.
Okay. When I choose to celebrate, typically it's maybe like a little weekend away or mini vacation. I love to travel. Or if it's just something quick, a quick celebration, it's typically with my team or my family, like a dinner.
Okay, cool.
I also have a
So
bell at
then,
my office that I like to ring.
oh, that's the celebration. It's time to celebrate, or yeah, I hit a goal. Cha-ching. Yeah, that's
Yeah, I
great.
got that from Selling Sunset. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. You got it from
Yeah.
where? Where'd you get that from?
Selling Sunset.
Okay,
Selling
okay.
Sunset. It's a show. It's a
Yeah.
show, reality show. Yeah.
Oh, I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah.
I got it. I see your smile there. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Right.
might have the same answer here from the last question, but you made a comment. It's more about the money. It's about living the good life. What does
Yeah.
living the good life mean to you?
Well, this has been something for me that has been a process to try to figure out. But I would say for me, it's waking up and knowing that I'm following my purpose. I know you and I talked about this a little bit when we had our call before the podcast, but I truly believe that my business has grown because I am supposed to help other people. I struggled for so long and felt so alone. And the one thing that I really, really realized when I shared my story through the Buffini program, I shared my success story just recently. The amount of people that came up to me and shared something with me that they're struggling with was like overwhelming. I couldn't believe how many people came up to me. And there's been a couple of people along the way. I'm not going to say their names on here and call them out, but there have been a couple of people that I met through Buffini that really inspired me and kind of mentored me. And I truly believe that I met them for a reason. And so for me, I think living the good life is kind of now giving back to other people the same way that people gave to me when I was struggling. And not that I won't hire men at my brokerage, but it seems that a lot of women want to come join my brokerage, and they all have a story and they all want help and they want mentorship. And I truly feel that, you know, I've been blessed now, and that my purpose is to be able to give back to these women and help them grow as well. And it's been a process for me figuring out that, but truly that's kind of what has been the good life for me. And when I live that out every day, I feel so much happier with myself.
That's awesome. And thank you for sharing that. Because my next question was going to be, what is your purpose? Because you've mentioned that a couple times. And it's about, what I'm hearing is about helping other women.
Yeah.
And is it about helping other women build their businesses or build their self-esteem?
I think it's more build their self-esteem. Yeah. It seems that every woman that has came to me that wants to come here, that's what they're struggling with, most of them. And I just remember what it feels like. And like I said, I still struggle with that today, but I think I'm able to put that aside a little bit with myself when I focus on, like, you know, helping others. And, you know, and I'm very honest with the people that come on to my team, you know, that I'm still growing myself. I'm still learning. So I don't have all the answers all the time, but that we're going to grow together, and that, you know, my heart is always in the right place. And so I would say that is definitely my purpose is, and it kind of has just came to me more and more. I feel like over the years, like I actually did go through a phase where I tried to hire a couple of men to come onto my team. And it's, you know, and still I would still bring on a male probably today if it was the right fit, you know, for our team. But it just seems that a lot of women are continuing to reach out to me, and they're inspired by my business. They want to grow themselves. And so now I've just kind of put the focus on, well, I'm just going to focus on helping other women. So that's kind of what I truly believe my purpose is.
That's good. Yeah, it's funny how you kind of grin when you go there from, like, I'm not going to hire guys, I'm just going to hire girls. But I get a kick out of that. So that's good stuff.
Because I was having a conversation with somebody about it at the last Buffini conference, and I kind of was playing around, you know, the whole idea that I feel like my purpose is just to help women. And he finally just came out and said it. He's like, you should just own it. Like, you're an all women team, and just own it. That's, you know, what your purpose is now. And so I've kind of been trying to embrace that a little bit more, and be more honest about it. That really, I do feel like that is kind of where my purpose is right now. But yeah.
Well, if I ever move out to O'Fallon, I'll be sure not to apply for a position on your team.
You can. Somebody told me your purpose is always changing, so you never know. In a year, it might be different.
That's funny. That's good. That's good. So it's funny you said something about your heart being in the right place, right? Yeah. And it's how does Janell know her heart's in the right place? How does she know that?
Uh, I feel like this is something else I've learned about myself. Like when I'm not making the best choices, I feel like I can feel it. I've gone through a couple of growth challenges over the years where like I just needed to hire because my business had grown and I couldn't handle it all. And I hired and I didn't do it the right way. And I immediately like knew. And so I've really started to pay attention that like when things don't feel the way that they're supposed to, that I need to pay more attention to my gut because it's typically right. So that's something that I actually work with my coach on that is that, you know, I tend to be a very loyal person. I'm a team player. And so I've learned that, you know, that doesn't always mean it's the right choice for me. And so like I have, you know, a list of things now, like when I hire, I have my whole ideal agent written out. And when I follow those things, it seems like, and when I hire based off of that, it seems that, you know, my anxiety and some of those, you know, feelings kind of go away. And so that's typically how I know that I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah, I think that goes back to something I heard Brian say actually one time. He says, when your values are clear, your decisions are easy. So I guess if you have that vision spelled out the way you want it, then the anxiety doesn't exist.
Right.
It doesn't, it's the same, not at a high level. So that's awesome. Hey, so
Exactly.
Janell, if I could change gears, I'm going to change gears a little bit here. So, you know, you had
Sure.
that struggle when, you know, earlier on, you had the low self-esteem going on. You said you prayed that you find the right spot or things would change for you. So where, if I could ask, you know, where does God come into play in all this? Have you always been a God-fearing person or a godly woman, let's say? Or did, you know, like Brian shares the 5 circles with us, and he always says, you know, when your financial circle's low, your spiritual circle's high because you're asking for that help. So where does God come into play with all this?
So just so everyone's aware, my husband has been sober for 8 years now, but back when he was struggling with his alcoholism, you know, our life was a mess, honestly. You know, I hid a lot of things, I enabled, and I always have been I've always been a spiritual person, and I always prayed. I mean, back then I prayed and prayed and prayed that he would get sober. I think when things finally started shifting for me was when I finally started praying for myself instead of him. And that might sound selfish, but I started praying to God that he would change how I reacted to him. And I asked God to change me instead of him. And that's honestly when things started changing for me. I started focusing on myself, and that's when I ended up finding the Buffini website. And when I started, you know, investing in coaching and the program, and then because I made changes in myself that actually helped my husband kind of hit his rock bottom and realize that he needed help for himself. So it was kind of amazing that I had prayed for so long for him. And then when I finally stopped and realized that I needed to put the focus on me and ask God to change me, that's actually when my life started changing.
Wow, that's pretty strong, because I'm sitting here thinking, like you made the comment, you said I started praying for myself, and that might sound selfish, but I think, you know, you hear the whole, like when you're in an airplane, if the oxygen mask come down, put yours on first, and then help others, right? And I think like you sound like such a giving person, and you're so like heart filled with wanting to give and help that you don't think about yourself. And sometimes we got to think about ourselves first to help others. And I think you exemplified that just in what you said there. And it's like the proof is in the pudding. Like you said, once you changed your mindset or how you prayed, then things started to change. So like in today's, like things are doing well for you.
That's honestly.
Keep going.
Yeah, no, that's what I was going to say is that like, well, what I started realizing with coaching was like one of my biggest real strengths is that I'm a team player. And so when I look back kind of on my life, I started realizing that like, that's why I'm always so loyal to people, and I am very giving. And so I would make decisions based off of other people versus, myself. And so when I finally started creating that shift of like putting myself first and focusing on what I needed to do to make myself better, that's when my whole life really honestly started changing. And so, I'm a mom. I have 2 kids. And I've found that like when I don't focus on myself first, then I'm not being as good of mom that I normally am. I can always tell like when I need to take some time for me, because I get real kind of short with my kids, or kind of get frustrated with them quicker. And so it's the same thing. It's the same thing with, when you're a mom, or, at work. You can't lead other people or be a good mom or good wife if you're not focusing on yourself first. And so I truly believe that God put the Buffini system in front of me. I've shared that with numerous people, that I do believe that night that I came across the site, that I was supposed to find that. And so that's why I've been a huge believer in it. And yeah, so I am a very spiritual person. And, my husband goes to AA, and, they teach at AA that, it doesn't have to be God. You just have to have a higher power. And I think that's true for everyone.
Yeah, that's so cool for you to say that, and for everybody to hear that. And I just hope everybody, heard, one of the most important things I think you said today, was what just said the last 5 minutes about helping yourself first. And when you help yourself first, you're able to better help others. Do you struggle with leadership in general?
Yeah. I want to say that I'm getting better at it. I feel like my team would say that I am. I know that my team members that have been with me for 5 years, versus the one now, my new agents now, they definitely comment on how much I've grown in the last 5 years as a leader. So, I think going back to the spiritual thing, I think when you are following your purpose, it doesn't always mean it's easy. So there's been times that I've struggled with leadership, and I've wondered, like, how did I get myself into this position? How do I keep growing? And it seems so hard. And I think back to how, it was hard being a single agent. And then I found myself where I am now. And so, it's just a new struggle now. Like, things have shifted. And now I'm trying to continue to grow myself. And it's not always easy, but that's why I honestly could never go back to not having a coach, because, my coach is the one that gives me, the confidence to keep going. And when I struggle, she gives me, systems to put into place. That's the other thing that I found that's really important to me, is that, when I struggle, I do better when I have a plan. Otherwise, I feel like I'm just like kind of floundering in life, and I start getting anxiety. So every time I struggle with something, my coach helps me put something, into play on how we're going to work on it.
Do you plan every day? Do you plan for the week? Do you plan for the month? How do you do your planning?
Yeah, I plan. So obviously I do the yearly marketing calendar, where I plan out, most of my year, how I'm going to, do all of my events at office and trainings and all of that. And then I pencil in all my kids, activities and things. But then I do tend, after I do the year planning, I do kind of then go back to like each week, kind of planning out my week. I do better. Like, I know when I plan my team meetings, I do it each week versus, a month in advance, because I just kind of find, like, especially when I do my team meetings, I find that the things that I like to share are things that I'm kind of feeling at that moment. So I might get inspired by something, and then I want to share that with my team. So for me, it's hard for me to plan like much more than a week in advance, especially when it comes to leadership, at least.
Yeah. So with leadership, you talked about the imposter syndrome earlier. Do you like I know I
Yeah.
struggle with leadership sometimes, and I feel like, am I really a leader? Am I a phony leader?
Yep.
Are they going to find me out? That I'm struggling with leadership. Do you ever
Mm-hmm.
have that insecurity about leadership?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was
Yeah.
telling you before we got on this call that, I actually have a lot of people that are wanting to come to my brokerage, And I've struggled with like, do I keep growing? What if I don't do the right things? Then they're going to find out that they're disappointed that they believed in me. So even as much as I've grown, I still continue to struggle with that. And I think that's why like my team has grown very slowly. But I know for me, like, because I am a spiritual person and I'm trying to follow my purpose, like having the right people on my team has been super important to me, because I feel like the culture and the environment is really important to me. And every time that we hire someone that's not a right fit, like you can really feel it. And so even though I'm getting people that are wanting to come here a lot, I've been very slow to hire, which I learned that from, Buffini also. But I've been slow to hire to make sure that it's the right fit for me. And then once I feel comfortable, growing there, then I've, grown again. And so, so I struggle with growing and trying to figure out what's next. And having that, imposter syndrome that like, I don't want to disappoint people. I don't want people to believe in me and then come here or, feel disappointed that I didn't do the right thing. So I think that most leaders probably feel that way, but I know for sure that I do.
So what is it about the disappointment that you worry about? Like if you feel like you've disappointed somebody, what is that? What's the fear behind that?
That probably goes back to me being kind of a giver and loyal person. Like I don't want to let people down that believe in me. And so, I think one thing that I have found is that every time I bring somebody on, I'm like all in, and I want them to be successful, and I want them to do good, and I want them to be happy that they came here. But yeah, it's something that I struggle with, and as much as I've grown, like I think your past always kind of trickles in occasionally.
Yeah.
So, there have been certain people that, I meet that I feel like appear very confident on the outside. And so sometimes I feel like my fear starts to come out when they're very confident. So I'm working on trying to get better with that, and I have over the years, but it's still something that I struggle with today.
No, well, I appreciate the vulnerability there and the transparency. So I'm going to dig one more time with the disappointment and the letting down. You said first you said I don't want to disappoint
Okay.
people, and then you said I don't want to let people
Yeah.
down. So my question would be, if you felt you disappointed somebody and you
Yeah.
felt like you were letting them down, is there a deeper fear still behind that? And if it's not, it's not. But if is there a deeper fear behind letting people down and disappointing them?
Um, I mean, if I think really hard about it, it's probably that I don't want to disappoint myself. I think that there's still feelings that I struggle with not believing I'm as good as the next person. I went through a lot of years, even once my business started growing, where I pictured these people that were very successful, that they were, had everything all together. And I pictured them being completely different than me. And what's really funny is that over the years, I've gotten to know and meet a lot of people that I kind of looked up to in the past. And they all are normal people that struggle with, similar things. Maybe not, there might not be this same person that has, a husband with an alcohol addiction, but, people that I've met all struggle with something in their life. And so I know that is something that I continue to struggle with, and I don't know why I continue to struggle with that. So like, if you can tell me, I would love to know. But I think when I get worried about disappointing others, it's probably more so being worried about also disappointing myself, because I still struggle with some of those, feelings.
Yeah. Do you find yourself, are you, like, I think some people, I think a lot of people, actually, I know I've struggled with this myself. When we feel like we're letting people down or disappointing them, I think like a lot of us worry about that. Are we lovable? Are we lovable? Or we have this fear of not being loved.
Yeah.
And I think that's a human
Yeah.
being's deepest fear of not being loved, right? And when
Hmm.
I ask those questions,
Yeah.
I'm like, the underlying deepest fear, is it that? Is it not being loved? Like you said, you were worried about disappointing yourself. If you disappointed yourself, would you still love yourself?
Well, yeah, I mean, that was one of the things that I struggled with, and I don't want to keep talking about my husband, but it was such a big thing in my life that we went through. And my husband is a great person. So like when I talk about his alcohol addiction, for people that don't really understand it, it might come across the wrong way, but living with an alcoholic, you start to question your self-worth, and you start to question if you are lovable and things like that. You start to think it's you when really it's not. It's an illness. So I do know that that is where some of my self-esteem issues came from, and where I kind of stopped loving myself because I was doing a lot of things. I became sick also. I was enabling and making choices that weren't healthy. And so yeah, I mean, I think maybe when I feel like I'm disappointing myself, I still struggle with like loving myself. That was something that I have talked to my coach about, and I continue to work on. And I think living the good life, it helps me to, when I'm focusing on my purpose and having a plan for my life, I do feel better about myself. And so, yeah, so I think it's just a continual thing that we have to work on as humans. And that's why the people that I surround myself with are, growth minded, and they know that, we're always a work in progress. And I love to surround myself with people that know that, and they don't, portray that everything's perfect. So I actually like to be around other people that I can really have a conversation with.
A genuine conversation, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, that's some heavy stuff we talked about here, and I appreciate your willingness to share that. It's hard. It's hard to be vulnerable, but if you notice, Janelle, if you notice, you've had this change of mindset, you've had this change of input, and you're attracting people.
Yeah.
You tell your story, and you're
Yeah.
attracting people. So you.
Yeah.
I got news for you. This is a news flash, Janelle. You are lovable. You are.
Oh, thank you, Rob. Thank
And
you.
people are attracted to you because of who you are and the spirit you have and the heart you have. People are attracted to you, and I think it's a testimony to who you are and who you're becoming. So thank you for sharing all that. And like
Thank
as
you.
we wrap up here, I'm going to ask you one more question, and there's a question I
Okay.
ask everybody, and it's how much more
Yeah.
chiseling do you got going on in your life?
Oh gosh. Um, I mean, I don't see myself stopping at that. I feel like once you kind of get on that, um, path to self, growth and recognition, like I can't imagine going backwards now. So I have so many more things that I know that I want to accomplish, and things that I still need to continue to work on for myself, my team, my family, and just myself personally. So I feel like I still have a lot to continue to work on. So
That's good stuff. And I mean, you've been very successful in this business. You're very humble from what I see and what I've talked to you in the times I've talked to you, and I appreciate that. And I think you're going to help a lot of people
thank you.
with your story, with what you shared here. So thank you for that. So Janelle, if somebody wanted to get a
You're
hold of
welcome.
you, yep, thank you. And when somebody wanted to get a hold of you in O'Fallon, Illinois, not St. Louis, Missouri, how would they get a hold of you?
Well, they can email me, and I am always open to phone calls and text messages. So after my success story was shared at the last conference, I had a lot of people reaching out to me on Facebook and email, and I'm happy to talk to anyone. And I would love to do so. So I can give you all my contact information, and I'm happy to talk to anyone.
Yeah, if you want to shoot it out real quick, like with your email address, or if there's a website or a phone number, you feel free to give it out right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. So I do have a Yeah, I do have a website. It's homesbyjanelle.com. My email is janelle@homesbyjanelle.com. So real easy. And then my cell phone is 618-444-6141.
Thank you for that. I got a feeling it's going to be ringing some more. So with everything you shared today, and the impact and the inspiration you're giving others. So, I'm grateful for your time. I'm grateful for your transparency and your willingness to share. And I think it's going to be a huge hit for everybody to hear this and know that they're not alone and that everybody struggles. Even at levels of success, you're going to struggle wherever you are. So it's just about managing them and to continue to push forward and continue to grow. So I'm grateful for you, Janelle. Thank you for doing that for us tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And so, Janelle, thanks again. Until next time, everybody, let's go get chiseled.